All right. Now, with the service section, just like every other part of the DeskManager program, there is a place in setup where you're probably going to want to do a little bit of work before you get too far along, just so that you've got a few things set up and ready for you before you dive in. To access the setup, we go to the upper left corner of the screen to the File menu, and under the File menu, we come down to the Setup option. In Setup, well, we need to just scroll down a little ways, and Service is right there on our screen. We click the little box to open up the service options, and now we see the three different sections for service setup. The first area, Service Default Values. Well, we've got quite a few different things in here that you can play around with to set up the service tools to work in the way you need it to. A lot of the things we have on the screen here, well, we're not going to be going into great detail right now as to what they are because that detailed information is already built into the system when you go to our Help tools. When you hit the Help button on the keyboard, well, DeskManager takes us right to our Service Default Values page where you'll find that information. So take a look at that when you have some time to understand better what you're looking at on the page here. Now, the other sections of setup that we have here are the substatus area and the part category area. Let's start with the service substatus. Now, throughout the program, you have the option of generating substatuses for just about everything that you're doing, and they are specific to that portion of the program. So we've got a substatus for deals, a substatus for inventory, a substatus for lease, prospects, and of course, service. Now, the substatus is meant to be something that is going to be useful and important to you in one way or another. So you want to make sure that whatever you're putting in here, well, it's going to be useful to you. The idea here is that by assigning a substatus to a particular item, and in this case, it would be to a service invoice, well, that substatus tells us a little something about what's going on with that particular item. Now, maybe we have something that's sitting around waiting for something to happen, but just looking at it, we might not know why. Well, there the substatus can become important. Hey, this one's sitting here waiting because we've got an appointment scheduled with the customer to come pick it up, but they just haven't gotten here to pick it up yet. Now, we have some examples of substatuses that you might want to work with, but of course you can come up with your own based on whatever works for you for these sorts of things. Click New to generate a new substatus, and then tell us what you want to call that substatus. Now, not only can we assign substatuses to our items, we can also go through and color code our substatuses so that when we go looking for something, well, when we glance at our invoice list, for example, we can tell what's going on with any particular item just by the color that's showing up on the screen under. So, for example, maybe my parts on back order, I want them to be bright red so that when I see an item that's sitting there bright red, well, I know I should be ignoring those right now because I just don't have the parts to finish those projects. You can go back and assign codes to the items that we have if you want to work with our existing things. You can also take a number of these and rename them. Play with them as you will. And, like I just showed you, you can create your own. Now, at the moment, while I don't have enough information in my service area to really show you how the color coding would then apply, well, I can very easily show you my inventory list with color codings. And it would work the same way. It's just your inventory list. You may have different codes, or the different colors may have different meanings, so you got a different code layout. But if this was my service, like I said, maybe the red are the ones where the parts are on back order. Maybe blue are the items that I had to send out for sublet work because I just don't have the right equipment in my shop. Maybe green are the items that are finished or I'm waiting for the customer to pick up. Maybe orange are items that are currently in progress. We've got everything we need. We're just still working on them. Well, you know what? Whatever is meaningful to you, feel free to create those different statuses and use them accordingly. All right, there's one last section in the parts settings to talk about here, and that is our part categories. Now, by default, everybody starts off with the same three categories as starters. That's going to be your labor, your part, and your sublet. Basically, the three that start out in all caps. Now, the idea behind these categories, Well, when I go into my parts table and I'm adding parts, if I assign one of these categories to that part, later when I use that part on an invoice, well, the category is going to determine where the totals for that part will then, well, add into. Are they going to add into the parts section? Are they going to add into the sublet area? Or are they going to add into the labor area? Now, you'll notice I have other part categories on my list. You can create your own part categories. The idea behind these other categories, well, that came as part of the search when we're looking for a part from our parts table. If we have a massive parts table, we can narrow down the amount of things we're wading through as we search for a particular item by classifying it into more refined categories. So when I get to that item and I need that oil filter, well, I can search under filters alone, and I don't have to be bothered hunting through all the different types of oil, all the different types of belts, all the different types of spark plugs that I have laying around, as it shows me just things that are of the category filter. Now, when we use part categories that we've created ourselves, well, DeskManager is going to treat those in terms of the totaling the same the way it would the main part category part. So those items, anything that I assign to accessories or belts or filters or whatever, they'll all show up in the parts totals. Now, the service module itself is broken up into three sections. We've got an area for estimates, we've got an area for invoices, and we've got an area for parts. Well, let's start with parts. When you're first getting started, you're going to want to make sure to add in your existing inventory so that we have a record of what you currently have on hand. And then as you purchase things while you're going along, well, you'll be adding those to the list as well. To create your initial inventory, well, we've got a number of different ways to get items onto your parts table. The first is by going up to the New button when you are looking at the parts list. And when you click New, you will get a menu, and you can then select Part to add a new part to the system. And begin by describing your part. Give us your part number for this particular item. If you wish to assign a category, you can select from our list of categories. Now, when you're adding parts to the system, whatever category you used for the last part you added, well, we're going to remember that, and that'll be the default for the next part you add. But of course, you're not written in stone. You can change it anytime you want to something else. But for today, tune-up will do just fine for my purposes. Next, give us a description of this particular item. Now, the location field that we have next was designed so that if you want to type in a little blurb giving instructions to your tech where to look on your premises to find this particular item. If you've got a large storage area, if you've got multiple storage areas, this is on shelf A in row 1 in the blue bucket next to the cases of oil, whatever is going to help your technician discover where that part is hidden. Unit price. Well, how much did you pay per item for this particular part? Now, in the defaults, if you have set up a markup percentage, clicking the button here will show your default markup percentage. You have the option of changing it right now, though, if you want to use something different for this part. But when you hit OK, DeskManager is now going to apply that markup percentage and calculate your sale price for you based on that markup. You don't have to use a markup. If you leave this field empty, you can type in your own sale price, and DeskManager will honor that sale price. It won't try to recalculate it for you. How many of these items do you currently have? What is the minimum quantity that you want to have on hand before this item or when this item needs to show up on the order report? When I get down to 2, I want this item on my reorder list. Now, at the moment, the on order section here is not being used. It was originally created to work with a purchase ordering system. The purchase ordering system, though, has kind of fallen behind. It's not anywhere near where we hope it will be. Our guys are still working on it. Not sure when it's going to be ready, but it is something that's being kicked around in the back rooms there. For the moment, this field is not used. UPC code. Well, it seems everything these days has one of those universal packaging codes of some kind or another on there. If you have a barcode scanner that can read those codes, well, this would be the point where you click your mouse into the UPC code field, grab that bar scanner, and scan the package of this part. Now, let me just clear up a misconception that a lot of people have when they come into this session about UPC codes. By scanning a part, it's not going to populate all this information for me. The UPC codes don't work that way. There is no universal database that says whenever I scan this code, it's always going to be a Delco spark plug for a 72 Mustang with a 302 engine. Barcodes on parts, well, they're really no different than stock numbers. And you know what? The kind of barcodes that you might have on auto parts may actually coincide with barcodes that might be on food at your local grocery store. The barcodes don't mean anything until you put them into a program and associate them with the part detail. So when I scan this part, well, from now on, whenever I use that part and I grab my scanner when I'm adding the part to the invoice and I scan it onto the invoice, well, DeskManager is going to know, that's this code here. That must mean they're using this part. Whereas if I took that same part and happened to drag it through the little scanner at the grocery store, it might tell me that instead of a spark plug, I'm holding a 24-ounce bottle of Mountain Dew. They only mean something to the computer system that they're tied to. There is no universal database of UPC codes. But if you have a barcode scanner and you're curious to find out, is it going to work with the DeskManager program so I can do this kind of thing? Well, you know what? There's a real simple way to find out. Open Notepad in your system. Scan something with that barcode reader, whether it's that bottle of soda on your desk, whether it's that box of Kleenex, whether it's a candy bar, some other item you just had for lunch. Scan the barcode. If Windows can read the barcode and populate this with a value, well, then so will DeskManager. It'll work just fine with us. All right. Part number from the vendor. Well, if your vendor is using a different part number for this particular item other than what you want to use for this particular item, well, feel free to pop that in here. It's up to you. When you purchased this part originally, well, was there an invoice number that you wanted to track with that from when you were billed by your vendor? Pop that in here. When you use this part on an invoice, by default, is it taxable or non-taxable? If you want it to be taxable, you can mark the box. Now later, when you're doing your work, you may very well be one of those types of places that does work that sometimes is taxable and sometimes is not. Maybe when I use this part for an over-the-counter customer, it might not necessarily be taxable. But if I'm using it, say, as part of a medical modification for a person with some sort of disability like a wheelchair or whatever, well, in that situation, it might not be taxable. Well, you can always decide on the fly when you're putting the part, you have the same check mark on the part when you're using it on an invoice. So it's easy to change if you ever need to. But what's more common? Is it more common to be taxable? Is it more common to be untaxable or non-taxable? All right, the next one, non-inventory item. This one requires an actual little bit more detailed explanation. And in hindsight, non-inventory item is probably not the best phrase that we could have used for this. What we're thinking of for a non-inventory item here. At the time that we put this in because there was a need that we needed to fill. This was the best we could come up with for a description at the time. Customers would say things like, hey, you know what? Whenever I take a car in for service, well, my state requires that I do a specific type of inspection. And I got to charge my customer for this inspection. All right, well, there's a good example of a non-inventory part. It's not like we can go out to the local auto parts warehouse, go to aisle 7, and find in between the oil filters and the Canuba wax a list of or a stacks of different inspections that can be performed. We're not going to be dragging them off the shelf into a basket, taking them up to the front, and having them scanned. It just doesn't work that way. So maybe non-tangible inventory item is a better way to describe this. Anything that you need to charge for that you maybe can't necessarily hold in your hand, show to your customer that this is something that took place. It's also very useful if you need other labor rates other than the one that we first start you with in the defaults. Maybe you charge different rates for different types of service based on the kind of service. Maybe one rate for heavy-duty things like changing out head gaskets or cylinder rings versus maybe what you would charge for something simple like a tune-up or an oil change. Well, you know what? You can also use this for labor rates. When we select the non-inventory item, DeskManager no longer is going to be tracking minimum quantities or actual quantities of your inventory. And when you have this item marked, we're not going to allow you to purchase those particular parts. We're just going to assume you have them on hand or that you're dealing with them in some other way. When dealing with labor, this is perfect where you are doing labor in the form of payroll. You've got somebody who you pay through a payroll program. Well, we don't need to do the cost on this side because the cost is already being handled by your payroll program. All we need to keep track of here is your charge. And so by marking the non-inventory item, that's exactly what will happen here. In these types of parts, we're only keeping track of what you're selling it to the customer for. Disabled. Well, eventually, a part that you might be working with is going to become obsolete. And one day you will use up the last of those parts, and you're never going to go out and buy more of those particular items. Well, we don't want those things cluttering up our search tables when we're looking for the parts we're adding to our new invoices. But at the same time, we don't want to just delete them from the system because, well, we've used them in different places. And if we delete them from the system, the little link between that part number and this part goes bye-bye. And now when somebody goes back and looks at one of those invoices, well, they'll see an empty spot where something was charged for, but because the part was deleted, there ain't nothing there anymore. We can't have that. That just is no good. Well, that's what disabled is all about. When this part's all done, all used up, you've run out of whatever you've got, you're not getting any more, you don't want to see it on your list anymore, you come in here and you disable that part. It stays in the system for historical purposes, but it will no longer appear when you're adding new items to the system on an invoice. You won't be able to add it to that invoice any longer. Won't be able to add it to that estimate any longer. Default vendor. Well, if you buy this most commonly from the same vendor every time, you can come in here and pick your default vendor. When we go to purchase a replenishing quantity of this part, well, DeskManager will populate that vendor into the vendor field because it's our default. Now, it's not going to be written in stone. If we need to, we can change it. But the bottom line is it might save us a little bit of time searching for it in the list if we are buying it from that same vendor again. Now, this very last field we have here, lot. Not everybody is going to see this field. If you only have one profile in your DeskManager program, well, then this field is useless because when there's only one profile, the parts can only belong to one location. But if you have multiple locations and multiple profiles, well, now we can assign which lot does this part belong to, so that in the future, only the techs that work on that lot or work in that profile will be able to use that particular part. All right, when we're finished with our initial creation of the part, just save it into the system, and we've got ourselves a part that's been added to our table. Now, over time, we're going to use these parts, and eventually we're going to get to the point where we've run out of a particular item, and it's time to restock. replenish that part? Well, we don't go and add a new part to the system because it's already here. We just need to restock it. We do that by going to New, and we do a new purchase. Now, DeskManager is going to read information about the part and information about the last purchase that we recorded in the system for that part, just to get the ball rolling for us. Now, of course, we understand as time passes, prices change. And it may be that while you paid for the part per unit that much last time, it may not be what it is any longer. Well, feel free to update it for this new purchase. Now, by default, we're going to keep the markup on there that you previously had for this particular item. If you want to use the default, you can check the box. If you want to put in a different value, you certainly can. But when I tab out of this field, DeskManager is going to recalculate the selling price based on that new unit price. Purchase quantity. How many are we picking up right now? Now, for the total cost, we're just multiplying unit price by quantity to get that value. Because we don't have a purchase ordering system in place yet, if you're dealing with things like shipping or tax or other stuff like that, well, you're going to have to manually calculate that into your unit price. We're not able to do that for you at this point. Purchase invoice number. As you are purchasing these parts, well, do you have an invoice number that you're being billed on for this particular part? Feel free to take that invoice number and pop it in here so it's there for reference in the future. Who's our purchase vendor? Now, like I said, our default vendor pops up, but it doesn't make them written in stone. If I need to, I can go and select a new vendor because today I'm getting it from someone else. They just didn't have them for me anymore, or just right now. Do you have a reference or a check number? Are there other notes you want to put in here? Do you want this part restricted to just one of your lots? Again, this lot field is only visible if you have multiple lots in your DeskManager in the first place. When you're finished, save. And there you have our part has now been restocked. All right. Now, the different things we've just done, adding a part to the system and replenishing a part that we have exhausted, well, both of those things can be done on the fly inside of an estimate or inside of an invoice as well. We will do one of those in just a little bit. Now, estimates and invoices. Well, as far as the program is concerned, they're pretty much almost virtually identical. The form that you're going to be filling out, whether it's an invoice, whether it's an estimate, they're the same no matter what. When I click New on either page, I'm going to get a new sheet. And depending on the page, it's either going to say New Estimate or New Invoice. But the rest, it's going to be identical no matter what you're looking at. This right now is the only place where they're different. Well, the way we handle them in the system, well, there's another difference right there. Now, estimates, because they are pretty much just a proposal. We need to give our customer an idea of what we think we need to do to solve their problem. And then we need their approval before we do the work. Invoices, on the other hand, well, they're more typically useful in a situation where a customer comes in and knows exactly what they want. They just want it. Hey, check that out. You guys have got a sign out front that says that you're doing tune-ups for 6-cylinder engines for $79.95. I'll take one of those. Well, the customer has told you what they want. Well, go right to an invoice. An estimate, well, with an estimate, well, obviously these are better suited in situations where we don't specifically know the problem. Well, we're going to start with an estimate. We'll make it an invoice as we go. We'll talk about the differences as we're going along here. So let's just start with our customer coming in with their complaint. And this customer's complaint is, all right, so there's our unusual complaint. So we've got a strange thumping sound coming from the rear passenger area when the customer makes a turn to the right, over 15 miles an hour. All right, there is no hard, fast fix for what this is because we don't know what it could be. It could be any number of different things. So at this point, our guys are going to need to take a look and figure out what's going on before we go any further. Now, whether we're doing an estimate or an invoice, in terms of the vehicle we're doing the work on, the customer we're doing the work for, well, DeskManager has quite a few different options for those items. We can pull vehicles out of your inventory. If you're going to be doing your own internal reconditioning, no problem. We can do all the work here, and then when everything's all said and done, we can take that invoice and charge it back to the car. We could take someone who we've sold a vehicle to. They've come back after the fact. They want some work done on the car. Heck, we can even sell our own in-house warranties. And then when our customer comes back for warranty work, well, we could charge part of it back to the vehicle and collect the rest over the counter from the customer, whatever percentages we've got split in that warranty. We can also take the walk-in off-the-street customer and get them taken care of as well. The program is very flexible. It's just a matter of how you're going to get the information in here based on the type of customer. If it's a vehicle in our inventory, we can pop in the stock number of the vehicle and have DeskManager load up that way. If it's a customer that we've sold something to, or that has been through our service department before, if they were a walk-in customer, but we've done 3 different jobs for them, we can go back and search for them by name or by company and pull their information in that way. Well, for today, what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring in a vehicle that I've sold just so we can look at a little bit of all the different things we can do. Because it's a vehicle I sold, it's part of my inventory, so I can charge something back to it, and I can also collect over the counter. Now, when we're searching for a vehicle, well, we can filter this list to show me everything that's gone through any part of my program. We can say, just show me things that have come through service. Just show me things that are, well, inventory. Just show me available inventory. Whoops, I missed. Available inventory. Or just show me the sold vehicles. Now, with these different selections here, depending on the option we click on, we can bring in just the vehicle information. In this case, because we've got a customer here, we can bring in just the name and address information of the customer. Or we can bring in both. Now, what you want to choose, obviously, well, you've got a customer who you sold a car to, but they're bringing you a different car to do the work. You might just want to bring in their name and then add the new vehicle. Or you've got a vehicle that's come back that you've sold, but the person you sold it to has sold it on to someone else now. So the owner's not the same, but the vehicle is, you've already got their information. Well, whatever works for you. Select the option that's most useful. Now for today, I'm going to grab this vehicle right here for our presentation, and you can see it's brought in the vehicle information and my customer's information. All right, now before we go on, we probably should be saving the work that we're doing as we're going along so that any of the changes that we're making while we're going along here don't get lost if something strange happens, like that klutzy tech happens to walk by and kicks the power cord out of the wall again, or, well, whatever. All right, I saved my work. Depending on how you set up the DeskManager program, there is an option where DeskManager will take a look at a number of different fields in the invoice here that we feel may very well be important to you. And if we find any of those fields are empty, we're going to give you a little message saying, hey, you don't have anything in these fields. Are you sure you want to continue? But it's just a warning. It's not going to stop you if you want to go on. You can say yes, you can say no, and then refill the information. You can say yes and continue on without it. It's up to you. Heck, you don't even have to have this thing turned on. All right. Now, we've got a complaint. This would be a good time to print this complaint out so that we can put it somewhere where our technicians can get to it so that they know what they're expected to do next. Inspect and figure out what the problem is. Well, under print, we have 2 different items here, our standard and our enhanced worksheet. These are the items that we This is what we call the sheets you're going to print out to hand to your techs. We call them worksheets. Some people call them repair orders. Some people call them work orders. Some people call it, well, you know what? We call them worksheets. And since it's our program, you get to get used to our terminology. All right. We've printed out our worksheet. Our technician has taken it. They've gone, they've done their thing, and now they think they know what we need to do to this car to get it into shape. So now we need to start building our parts and labor table here. What are we doing to this car? Well, whether you're going to have your technicians actually doing this work, loading up the information, or you're going to have them scribble on the worksheet and someone else is going to do it, the clean blank button here, that's the new button. When you click on it, we're adding a new item to the invoice. All right. If you are working with a part that is already on your parts table, if you know the part number, you can just start typing your part numbers. And you'll notice DeskManager has brought a list of every part that matches what I've typed so far. Obviously, the more you type, the more that list gets narrowed down. But when you see the part you want, you can click on it to select it. And now when I tab out of this field, DeskManager will find that part and load the information onto the page. We have a couple fields here, remedy, cure. They're just short little fields where we're asking you to tell us, well, why do you think you need to use this part? Here's where you get to put in a little description. Now, please do not attempt to write out the whole of War and Peace in these two fields. It's not going to work. They both have a limit. But put in a short blurb as to why you think you need this part, if that is something that you are required to do for when you print out your estimate later to show to your customer. You want to conform to your local laws. That's what those were designed for. Now, down here at the bottom, the sale price and the cost information. How much information anybody is going to be allowed to see is determined by user security. At the moment, I have permission to see my costs. But maybe I don't want everybody to see my cost. Well, if I turn off the permissions for cost for a particular user, they won't see that bottom bit there. And if they try and click the little button that we just hit to make it go away, if they try to click that to open it up again, well, you know what? They're going to get a message saying, I'm sorry, you don't have rights to view that information. Please contact your system administrator to have it unlocked. But here's where I can tell the system how many of these parts am I using, or if this happens to be labor, we'll see that a little later, we can put in the number of hours of labor. If I need to, I can change my sale price. Right now, I can make an item taxable or non-taxable by checking the box. And again, I can review the cost information here. When I'm done, and I save this part onto the system, now remember, anything that uses the built-in category, just part, or that uses one of the categories that I've created custom, well, those totals here go into my part totals. Now, let's say we need to put a part on here that I have not yet added to my parts table. Well, that's pretty simple, too. We could use this to add a new part from right here. Just tell us the new part number that you're adding to the system. And then tell us what the part is. Now, by default, in this situation, we're just going to grab the category part. But again, feel free to change that to something else if you want to assign this part to a different category. Now, at the moment, remedy and cure isn't terribly important because we are adding this to the system first, and then we'll add it to the invoice a little bit later. So to have this added to the system, we don't need this right now. But if you want to have it filled in ahead of time just to have it there, by all means, do what you want to do. Tell us how many you're going to be using. If you want to put in a sale price, you can, but you don't have to do that yet. It would be nice, though, to at least give us your cost for this particular item. When are you purchasing it? Is the item taxable? Do you want to set your markup now? Do you want to pick your vendor now? And when you're done, save that part. And DeskManager will stop and say, oh, wait a minute, you know what? That part number does not exist on our parts table. Would you like to add it? And when you click yes, DeskManager is going to grab all the stuff from here and put it back into that new part form that we filled out a little while ago. Now, if in reality you're picking up more than just one of those items, you can update that here, update your minimum quantity, and fill in any other last little bits that you want to fill in before you go on. You want a markup, you can set your markup, have it calculate your sale price. And now when we save this in the system, you'll notice DeskManager has gone and updated anything that needed to be changed as a result of what we did on that previous page. And now when we save this item again, now it goes on to our list. Now you may work from time to time with parts that you just do not want to go onto your parts table. It's going to be a one of, you're just going to be dealing with it here. You don't want to see it anywhere else. Well, in that situation, when you go to add that part to the invoice, do not give us a part number. Leave that blank. Just put in a description of what that part is. Fill out as much of the rest of the information as you need to. Now, while this is a part that I'm adding at the moment, I want to do something a little different because I want to kill two birds with one stone. Parts go into the part totals here, labor go into the labor totals here, sublet goes into the sublet totals here. Well, I've already got some labor stuff that we're going to add in just a minute, but what I don't have is some sublet stuff to add. So I'm going to make this sublet just to kill two birds with one stone, show you how to add a part that you don't want on your inventory list, as well as what happens if you use the category sublet. What happens to the numbers? All right. Tell us what you're charging the customer for this particular item. Is it taxable? What did it cost you? If you want to just put in the cost and use a markup, you certainly can. Or if you want to do it like I did, decide your selling price and put in your cost, you can ignore markup and DeskManager will go with what you've got there. And of course, tell us your vendor. And now when you save that part in the system, because you did not give us a part number, DeskManager is going to say, okay, no problem. And it only will show up here on this invoice. Now, because I used the category of sublet, this total here, well, it didn't go here. It went here. It's now in my sublet totals. Now, when it comes to labor, when we go to add a new part, well, you know what? Maybe we don't remember the part number. You can hit this little magnifying glass to go search our parts list. And like I said before, this is where you can use the different categories to filter what you're looking at. And right now, if I select the labor category, I'm going to see the built-in labor from our service setup values. And I can see other items that I have assigned to the category of labor are also on this list. Now, when it comes to labor, we know when you're using the built-in labor from the defaults that it is labor. We don't need to also assign the labor category. It's just a little redundant. But if you have a part that you have created, you certainly can assign the labor category so that it totals up into the labor totals. This is going to go simply because it is our default labor. For description, you can certainly describe what kind of labor were you doing here. And if you need more information, you can certainly add to the remedy and cure. Now, depending on your situation, in this case, labor is generally calculated in hours, so we can put in the number of hours. If the labor is taxable, you can mark that if you need to. Now, if you are not using some sort of a payroll system to pay your people, but you need to, say, cut a check like you would for a 1099 contractor, well, you can certainly put in your cost for this labor per hour. And then DeskManager will calculate a total cost, and we can even apply a vendor based on, well, creating our technicians as vendors in DeskManager so that we can have them as a vendor here. Now, when I save this, again, because I'm using the built-in labor part, or if I was using something that used the labor category, that total for the labor charge will show up in the labor box here. All right. So that shows us a little bit of everything. Adding a part that we already had in inventory, creating a part that we want to add to inventory, putting on a part that we do not want in inventory, and using up some labor. Now, I probably would want to go ahead and print this out in one of our estimate formats so that I got something to show to my customer. And then labor information shows up over here. Part information shows up over here. The customer's original complaint shows up in here. We've got a place where the technician can sign this, and if you want, depending on the situation, in this case, because it's inspection, you might circle inspection and scratch out repair, or if the job was already worked, you might circle repair, scratch out inspection for the technician's signature. There's a section in the setup where you can put all your disclaimer information, 21 lines worth of disclaimer information that'll show up here. And then there's a place at the bottom where your customer can sign. And down at the bottom, there's also a place where you just put generalized custom text at the bottom here, like, well, depending on the time of year, maybe you want to wish them happy summer or season's greetings or whatever the case. Maybe put in a little blurb, hey, our office is going to be closed during this holiday, so if you need to, please pick up your car before, otherwise we'll be back on such and such a day. You know, that kind of stuff. All right, the customer has agreed. We're going to go ahead and do the work. So my guys go, well, at this point, it's time to make this estimate into an invoice. Now let's talk a little bit more about the differences between an estimate and an invoice. This is the perfect opportunity. Estimates, because they are proposals, we haven't done the work yet. Well, you know what? These parts that I'm using, my quantities have not been deducted from inventory yet. This brake pad here is the brake pad that I just restocked into the system. I'm going to save my work one more time. I'm going to exit out of here. And right now, if I go back to the parts table, that part, well, you know what? Just to be sure, let's reload. That part is sitting here with a quantity of 10, the part that I just replenished. And that's how many I bought. And that part purchase was 10 more of these items. So even though I've used it on that estimate, it has not deducted from the quantity because right now it's just a proposal. We haven't even gotten approval from our customer. When we do get approval, well, we're not going to force you to recreate this whole estimate now over on the invoice side. No, what we're going to do is we're going to convert it from an estimate to an invoice. We do that by highlighting the item that we're ready to convert and hitting the convert button. DeskManager is pretty smart. It's going to look and see, hey, you're looking at estimates right now. since conversion is a one-way street, well, the only direction we can go from estimates is to invoices. So if I hit convert now, so say you want to convert this to an invoice? Yes, I do. Now invoices, because invoices are jobs that we are actively working on, well, invoices, the parts have been deducted. Now, if you need to, that convert button can also be used to convert an invoice back to being an estimate. Now, at the time that I converted the estimate to the invoice, if I go now to the parts table, if I reload this parts table right now, that part has been used. That part was deducted. Well, if I take that invoice and I send it back to being an estimate, well, any parts that were used in that invoice get put back onto the parts table when this item goes back to being an estimate. So the two are rather interchangeable if necessary. But there is one restriction. Estimates, we don't allow you to make any changes to the job status. You can't change an estimate from pending to completed. You can't assign a substatus. Oh, and you know what? We also don't let you collect any money on your estimates. Whereas invoices, well, invoices, we can change the job status. We can set a projected completion date. We can change the substatus. And we can do collections. Now, if you have done collections on an invoice, you will not be allowed to send it back to being an estimate. That is the one major restriction. All right, my guys have come along. They've gotten close to doing the work, but darn it, we still don't have that one part. Well, like I said before, when you assign a substatus to an item, and now I got a couple of things so I can show you. When I refresh my page, whoops, okay, I did the wrong one. I opened the wrong item. Well, that's okay. When you set a substatus on an item, now when the highlight's on there, you can't see the color coding. Yeah, the highlight kind of defeats the color coding. But when you highlight something else, now we can see the color coding. All right, let's do the actual work to the invoice that I was putting together today. Might be a little better than messing around with that ancient history stuff. All right. When we are finished with the job, we can set this to completed. We can set this to whatever we need to. Even when this is completed, we can change the substatus. So if we've completed the job, if we want to set the substatus to, okay, we've called the customer, we're waiting for customer pickup, or customer has scheduled an appointment, or whatever, however we want to deal with that, that's fine. We can make those changes as we go. But when we set this to completed, well, essentially, this is your last chance. Because when you save it one more time, if you are missing any bits of information, this is the time when you want to say no, fill out that information and get it in here. Because if you say yes and continue on, now that that's been marked as completed, we're locking down all the work. Because we're done. We don't want anything to change. This is now the customer's bill, and we're going to charge them. And we don't want somebody coming along and playing around with something and having the numbers get all changed up. Oh, you know what? I forgot about something here. Now, depending on your user security, you can take items that are completed and move them back to pending, like I'm going to do right now because I forgot to talk about something. But, hey, it gives you a chance to talk about the user security controlling the job status as well. Shop supplies. There is a place in the setup where you can put in a calculation for shop supplies. And when you put in a percentage, you can hit this button. There's also an option to have it automatically calculate for you so you don't have to remember to hit the button. But with the shop supplies, didn't I set? Okay, now I'm confused. I thought I had a shop supply set up. Let's find out. Service. I do, 4%. somebody broke the little button. All right, I'll have to go and kick a programmer for that, but I can use this in the meantime. Save that, exit from here, and now if I go back, it's not letting me update it. There we go. Okay. We can put in our shop supply rate, and the program will then calculate for us what the percentage is. It should have loaded that in here for me by default. I'm not sure why that didn't load up by default. Well, that's what I'm going to have to look into. Strange. But no problem. You can also set a maximum for your shop supply. So if I was to change this to some outrageous percentage like 25% of my charge and then recalculate, well, when you put a cap on it, it'll never go past that value. So if you can say, okay, charge 2%, 4%, 5%, whatever, but never go past $25, well, the system will do just that. It'll honor whatever cap you put in the defaults. All right, enough of that. Let's complete this and save. And yes, I'm done. All right. Well, now would be a time that we might want to print one of our invoice-related items. We have quite a few different invoices to choose from. Some of these, well, like the cost invoice, the long format invoice, these are more internal kinds of things. If you want to print this out and put it into a folder in the back of your office kind of thing. These invoices are the kinds of things which print out to hand to your customer in terms of a bill that they need to pay. We also have the option of printing worksheets from here as well, because like I said before, you don't have to start with an estimate. You can go right to an invoice, but you still probably are going to need to print something out for your technician to look at, and you can do that from right here. Envelope, play around with your receipts, set some defaults. You got a lot of different things you can do from in here. And while we're at it, let's talk about some of these other buttons at the top here. Save. All right. Seriously, by now, I hope, as long as computers have been around, I hope everybody understands the concept of the save button. I shouldn't have to explain that one. Thank you. Pictures. Well, pictures, this is identical to the pictures options that we have on the inventory side for your vehicles, except, well, the pictures that we put onto our inventory are there. So if we're going to upload the vehicle to, well, the free web light that comes with DeskManager or the Web Manager program, if you subscribe to that add-on, well, then those pictures will go up to our website. We don't necessarily want pictures from our service department going up to our website, but what these pictures are for, well, what's useful to you? Maybe you want to take some pictures of the vehicle beforehand because part of the work you're going to be doing is touching up some scratches. So you want to take a picture of the scratch here and the scratch there that the guys are supposed to work on. Maybe you want to do some body work and you're going to do a before and after shot to show your customer how clean it looks compared to what it was before. Maybe one of the parts that you're putting into the system here is when you're all said and done, everything's buttoned up, you're not going to be able to point it out to the customer that, hey, there's that brand new part that we put in there because it's way buried inside of other things. You know? So maybe you want to take a picture of that brand new shiny camshaft that the guys have just bolted into the block before they drop the intake manifold back over top of it and bolt the headers back on. You know, whatever you need to do. Well, this picture tool works just the same. Click the New button, browse to where you have those photos downloaded from your digital camera, and then they'll load up in here so you have them to review. Tasks. Tasks is probably one of the more useful tools from the service side of the program. Although right now, tasks and the scheduler, they kind of go hand in hand. It's just they're meant for slightly different reasons, for different things. Now with the tasks are a way for me to assign something that I need to have done in relation to this item. And again, you're going to find this throughout the program. So you can find that tasks button on your vehicles, in your deals, in your buy here, pay here, in your leases, in your prospects, and of course here in your service. Now, in this situation, because this service item happens to also be a vehicle in my inventory, well, this task is going to tie in all places. And because it's a sold vehicle, we'll also be able to see it in deal because it's all specific to this vehicle. And this vehicle is available in a number of different places. Now, pick the user in the system that you want to assign this to. It could be also used to assign to just anyone who can get the job done. You could just make it a note that you're putting in here just so you've got somewhere to scribble something that you want to keep track of. Now, when you assign this to another user, you can set a follow-up for that user, basically an alarm reminder. Hey, you've got something you need to deal with here. When do you want this to happen? You can pick the date from a calendar, set the time yourself. You can pick the date and time from a schedule list. And then any other tasks that have been scheduled from this vehicle or from other vehicles will show up on this schedule list as well, so you can see what kind of availability you might have for someone who's going to be doing this kind of stuff. And maybe on Friday by 11 o'clock, I want something to be taking place. Now, whatever that something is, you can create a subject that you're going to have available on this list to use over and over. If it's a one-time thing, you can just type it into the area here. If there's someone special they need to talk to, you can pop that in here. If you want to set a status, you can use any of our built-in statuses, or you can add your own statuses. Whoops. Oh, I see. I was still in that window. Oh, my bad. Let's try this again. Click in here. Now type in the task in question. All right, whatever. You get the general idea. Now you've got a task that you can assign to someone in the system. Now with this date and time, this is the cool bit. When you save this in the system, if this user is logged into DeskManager on this day, when it hits 11 o'clock or within about 30 seconds of it hitting 11 o'clock, this little task here is going to pop up the same way Outlook pops up appointments and reminders that you've scheduled on your Outlook calendar. That'll pop up here in DeskManager for this user. Now, if the user is not logged in on this date and time when this is supposed to happen, well, the next time they do log in, DeskManager is going to see, oh, hey, there was something that we wanted to show you that you missed, and pop it up right then and there with the rest of the things that you get when you're first launching into the program. Now, when that happens, the user can go back to this item, they can clear their follow-up, and then they can immediately create a new item to send the task along to the next person in the chain, or to send it back to the manager, or whatever you need to do. This is, you figure out what kind of process you want and make your employees, bow to it. Then any tasks that have been set through this tool can be viewed from the follow-up button. Now, by default, when you click follow-up in service, you will see follow-ups related to service. Typically, by default, you're going to see follow-ups for the user that you're logged in as, but depending on user permissions, you can check out follow-ups for other users, for other parts of the programs, for all kinds of different things. For long date ranges, maybe I want to see everything that's scheduled for the next 6 months, no problem. The tool can do that for you. Now, the schedule tool is similar. The schedule tool allows you, though, this is tied to labor. The idea here is to schedule technicians who are going to be doing work. Now, you can create employees in the DeskManager setup. Those employees can be tied to labor rate parts in the parts table. So that way I could pick an employee by their labor rate and schedule time for that employee. And when I select a date, Well, it's going to start by just creating a labor charge for half an hour on this invoice for that employee. And then when I go into that labor item, I can edit that labor item, change the quantity from half an hour to, well, whatever I need to for the work that needs to be done by this particular technician so as to schedule their time. So schedule works very similar to tasks. It's just schedule ties into what can then be added to your invoice as a labor item based on tech availability. We're going to save collection for the last thing we talk about. CAP. Well, we already looked at print, so we're going to jump over to CAP. CAP is short for cost and profit. CAP, cost and profit. When we click the button, at the top we see here cost-related information and some profit information. Now, in the situation where this is a vehicle that has passed through your inventory and you sold this vehicle, we are going to pull from the products page the service contract and the insurance information to have handy here in case that's relevant to the work you're doing. Now, in this particular instance, I did not sell warranty to this customer. I did not collect insurance information or sell insurance to this customer, so I don't have anything here. Well, in the situation where that didn't happen, or it's a walk-in off-the-street customer, click Add Third Party to put in maybe a new warranty contract that you're going to do the service work for and get paid by the warranty company. Keep track of insurance information if you need to bill the work that you're doing back to the insurance company. But now you can have that information handy and stored here inside the invoice. Log. Well, log is pretty simple. This is a list, a log, if you will, of all the different things that have happened on this estimate, this invoice, as it has gone through its lifetime. It started out as an estimate. Parts were added. The status was changed to pending, and it became an invoice. And then a few other things have happened to it. I changed it to completed. I changed it back to pending. I changed it back to completed. Well, you know what? If I were to delete a part, that would show up on here. And whoever's doing whatever work to this item, as long as everybody who's working in the DeskManager program has their own login name and password, you can go back and see at any point in time, oh, so-and-so added a part, then someone else came along and deleted the part. They put in a different part. Well, you know, you've got a history of what's happened to this thing here. Docs. Well, the Documents tool is virtually identical to the Pictures tool, except it's for documents. Now, where would this be useful? Well, this is more useful for those customers that have to do a little bit of sublet here and there. I replaced the A-frame, I put the new brakes and wheel assemblies on there and all that, but unfortunately I just don't have one of them fancy newfangled laser alignment tools to make sure everything's all lined up and cambered the way it's supposed to be for this year model car. Well, I send it across the street to my buddy. He takes care of it. He sends me a bill. I can take that bill over my document scanner, scan that into my computer, and then I can attach that scanned document to this invoice. Now, I'm pretty sure that somewhere here in my data, where's my folder there, I've got a PDF file that I can use as an example here. I have a PDF document somewhere. I know I copied one in here for this. Oh, there we go. That'll do right there. PDF. Right in front of my very eyes, and I'm too blind to see it. All right, so you find the document, however, whatever format you've scanned it in, find your document. And now when you open it, well, DeskManager is going to take that document, and we're going to make a copy of it. We're going to stash that copy in your data folder in a special documents folder associated with this invoice. That way, if anything happens to the original, well, as long as you've been backing up your DeskManager the way we ask you to whenever you exit the program, As long as you're doing your daily or your weekly backups, well, if something happens to that original version of the document, you still got this copy stashed with your DeskManager stuff. You can come back and refer to it at any time. And now it's part of my vehicle. Or, well, part of my invoice in this case. That documents tool is also available for vehicles in your inventory, for deals in your deal area, for leases. I think we may have even added it for prospects. I can't remember. I know we added it for some of the third-party things like finance companies and warranty companies where you need to keep certain documentation on file, stuff like that. There's all kinds of goodies. All right, now let's talk about collections. There are a number of different things you can do with the work that we've done on this invoice. If this was a vehicle of my inventory and I was doing internal reconditioning, I could take the work that I've just done and charge it back onto that vehicle. In this case, with it being a vehicle that I sold to a customer, if I had sold this customer a warranty, I could charge some of the work back onto the car in terms of my portion of the warranty costs and collect the other half that's coming from the customer as a normal over-the-counter payment. Or, like I said, I can collect it all as over-the-counter. Well, we're going to do one of both. We're going to do a charge back to the car, and we're going to do an over-the-counter collection. So you can see how simple and easy it is to do either one. Click the collection button. Here is a list of the collections that we've already performed on this item, and so far, nothing. Now, if it's just an internal kind of thing that we want to charge back to the car, we have the internal collection right here. Now, the word payment is not terribly accurate in this situation because we're not actually collecting a payment. We're not going over to the guys on the DMS side saying, okay, here, give me $30 for the work that I just did on this car. I'll give it, otherwise I'm holding it hostage. No, it doesn't work like that. But we tell the system how much do we want to charge back onto the car. I'm just going to do a small amount for now just so we can see how this looks. By default, we're going to expense this to your category of reconditioning, recon. But we understand some of you out there may do some internal reconditioning and some external reconditioning, and maybe you want to separate the two. You can create a category called internal recon and use that instead. I'm just going to use the one that's already there just to make things simple. Now, we populate the notes, internal invoice. We do this for a reason, because it makes it easier to identify this item when we look at it over on the inventory side and know exactly where it came from without having to go through a couple extra hoops. But if you want extra notes there, feel free to add them on to the end. No problem. Now, when you're done, save. And now we've charged some money back onto this car. So now to show you what that looks like from the inventory side, I just need to find that stock number. INV 1004. I don't need to save any changes. Didn't do any changes. So let's go to stock number and INV 1004. And here's the vehicle. Now when I open it up and I go to my cost page, there's that internal reconditioning that we just did charged back onto the vehicle. And there I see my internal notes hanging out over here. Now here's something else that's pretty cool. Any vehicle in your inventory or any vehicle that you've sold, you can check out your service history from this button right here to see what kind of work you've done on it yourself if you've taken place in our service module. But when you're stocking cars into the system, and you know you want some reconditioning done on this one, you want something done on that one, well, while you're stocking the car in, you can come right here, hit that button, and look at right that. New estimate, new invoice. And you can just start the process right here from inside that vehicle without having to exit out of here, jump over to service, try and find the vehicle again, and then forget what you were working on and grab the wrong vehicle. Well, you know what? It's all right here. While you got the vehicle open, while you're working on it, just throw it right in there. And it's all set, ready to go for your guys in service to just print out a worksheet and get busy doing the work. Isn't it nice how we tie all these things together? All right. When the customer is paying over the counter, well, we use the plain old collect payment. Now, when are you getting this money from the customer? How much are you getting? You don't have to collect the full thing up front. If you want to make a deal with your customer to pay a certain amount now or a certain amount later, no problem. You can set a next payment due date. You can put in notes in here. Now, with this version of the tool, because we're actually collecting real money, you can do a normal, manual, old-style way where you put your hand out and they paste some stuff into it, whether it's cash or credit card, money order, blah, blah, blah. But when you're dealing with when you're dealing with checks, checks, this can do checks, or credit cards or debit cards. If you're working with our online payment processor and you are our partner at the folks over there at PayPros, and you've got yourselves one of their little hand scanners that will let you scan the credit card information in, you can use the online payment processing to process the payment, collect it that way, just like you can for your deals, for your buy here, pay here, for your lease here, pay here, all that fun stuff. Well, I'm just going to do it manual for today. I'm going to save that in the system. And when we do an over-the-counter collection, the system will automatically pop open and print a receipt for us. Now, when we saw the set defaults and customize and all that stuff under print, well, one of those was to customize your receipt here. You can choose between the two service receipts we have by default to the detailed and the brief. With the receipts, if you need to go back and print something out, you can highlight an item and hit the receipt button. Now, by default, we do not print receipts for the internal items. But if you want to, you certainly can. And then put this on file somewhere if you need to keep track of that sort of thing. Perfectly fine. It's right there, ready to go. All right. That is pretty much everything that I have to show you for the service side of the program for today. Now, just like every other part of the program, there are a large number of reports that you're going to want to check out and play around with to see what kind of information you can learn about what's been going on with the work you've done in the service tools. Definitely take some time and check them out. Everybody runs their business a little bit differently, so I can't tell you which of these reports is going to be most useful to you and which is not. Some people like certain reports but not others, and some people feel exactly the opposite. They don't like the certain reports, but they like the others. Well, you know what? You'll figure that out after you've played with them for a little bit.